But I'm very lucky to work for a university that sits at the forefront of a lot of the innovative spaces in the world, has been world recognised for that approach. And I'm also very lucky to now be in a position where some of the models that we've created, that we've tested and tried over the last 18 months, I just yesterday received permission to share those globally across any universities that are keen to talk to us about it. But essentially what I want to do is I just want to set the scene around the future of work and what's happening with the digital revolution. If you're across any of this, I apologise, but it does just set up what I want to talk about after. What's likely to change and what capabilities will be in demand in 2025? About 5 years ago now, when my oldest daughter started high school, it was said, Lani, you're going to have between 7 and 15 career changes. Not just job changes, career changes. Latest figure I got yesterday was 30. So, who knows? Could be huge. So how do we prepare our future generations, but also how do we prepare the current ones to be able to survive and thrive and be sustainable in that new environment? Impact of automation. This slide shows what type of roles are likely to be lost. And if you look down the right-hand side as I'm looking at it, so a bit closest to me, they're the jobs that are most likely to be impacted by automation. And a lot of them are in those roles. We had Justin talking about CHEP and people shifting containers and everything else. Well, you look at the robotics that's in place now and all those kinds of things, and it's just likely to increase. So there's a social question, isn't there, of how we manage to take those people from those roles and give them a chance to be self-sustaining and contributing and supported members of society without as big an impact on the environment. And, that's a bit off topic, but that's a massive challenge for society, isn't it? And I think as innovators, we should probably be at the forefront of that. The trends are supported by a range of emerging technologies. We all know these things, Internet of all things, which is apparently meant to connect every single device so it can talk to each other. That'd be great. This clicker is now talking to my computer and telling me that I'm going too slowly or too quickly, one of the two. Immersive technologies where you don't actually know you're in the technology, but hey, you're in the technology, so things like that. World Economic Forum, in many industries and countries, the most in-demand occupations or specialities did not exist 10 or even 5 years ago, and the currency of the skills that all of us have probably learned and take for granted is decreasing daily. Now, the impact on our educational institutions in this regard, and don't forget I work for one, is pretty seismic as well, because what we measure in those institutions at the moment on the whole is really your technical ability and your ability to regurgitate information. And we examine that and we say, how well do you do that piece of accounting? Not how well can you apply it, how well can you collaborate with others and teach them how to apply it, not how you can apply that in a strategic sense to make a real difference. We teach the technical. But the technical is being far outstripped by what all of our businesses are doing on a day-to-day. University can't keep up with that, not through lack of will or capability, but purely because of the structure we work under, right? So why do we teach it? And we teach it because that's what we get our bucks from. But we're all non-for-profits, okay? So that's the model. This is a report from The Economist, and it's about capabilities of the workforce of the future and the types of things that are being asked for. And they interviewed a number of businesses and said, what are most paramount for you? And I can tell you that technical was down here, didn't even apply. All these so-called soft skills and the really big ones that applied were those. Problem solving, team working, communication and critical thinking. Now, can you put your hand up here if you do not use any of them in your day-to-day? And if anybody puts their hand up, get out. And also, can you put your hand up if you've been involved in an innovation project within your workspace? Who's been involved in an innovation project? Did you use any of them? You would have used all of them, wouldn't you? Okay, so we're now getting a picture, aren't we, of the capabilities that we need from our people that will enable us to drive the innovation that will hopefully, and I have great faith in humankind, strangely enough, despite reading the papers every day, hopefully presenting those solutions to the problems we now face. One of the challenges it presents to society is how you actually measure and validate people's capability in those areas. And this is where who I work for, DeakinDigital, has brought up something that's actually not been done anywhere else in the world, which is quite amazing. So what we're seeing is a rise of what's been called micro-credentials. And if you think of the degree or the higher education qualification, that's a macro-credential, right? It's quite monolithic, it's quite solid, it's pretty structured. And it follows A to B in a pretty similar fashion across most universities, right? You know, the stuff that Nick was talking about sounds absolutely brilliant. But in my opinion, and my opinion only, that's a sustainable innovation. Because what it does is it takes something else that somebody else is doing already and does it in a different manner, right? Whereas what's probably needed is a disruptive innovation. And what that does is targets a market that would normally not consume it however you dressed it up, presents it in a fashion that is far more flexible, far more efficient, and actually comes in, funnily enough, at a price point that enables those non-consumers to really engage with it, and produces a result that is not what the institution or the provider thinks is needed, but is what industry and society needs. The other thing about the micro-credentials, guys, is they're interchangeable, they're collaborative, and they evolve. And by that I mean is that they will take into account any learning that is done anywhere at any time. Like, I've learnt so much more being in the job and actually stuffing up and making some very embarrassing mistakes than I ever did from any of my formal education. So these are some of the changes that we're wanting to have a look at, because it's what the new world order is wanting us to do. So what we built is DeakinDigital built professional practice credentials. And I don't know if you can see them there, but essentially the core employability, the soft skills, they're the really, really hard ones. And they're all the ones that everybody needs. And what they do is they actually align to the graduate learning outcomes from Deakin University, which are reflected at just about every uni, guys. We've built a measure, and it's a trusted measure. And the reason it's trusted is we built a whole new standard, a global standard behind this that has been built in collaboration with industry. So we've gone across all of the other recognised benchmarks like ISO, Skills in Information Age. We've talked to industry, we've gone to the research, we've talked to the World Economic Forum, OECD, CSIRO, ONET, you name it. That's what took us 2 years, was building that goddamn standard. Then we had to test it. And we tested it by putting it through academic rigour, because what industry told us is they needed a measure of the things they wanted to know, but they needed it done by a process they could trust, and they still trust academic process. So we had to build a new process that was flexible, quicker, less time consuming, less costly, and have it approved by academic board. So we built it. And we also built it across leadership, and we built it in some professional expertise areas, and that's growing. And professional expertise is a measure of somebody's capability in things like risk management, project management, data analytics, data science, data governance, digital marketing, creative, all these things that we've done in association with recognised industry associations in industry, not academia. So when we looked at that slide back before, and it had the 4 key ones that came out of that Economist report, problem solving and critical thinking, and communication and teamwork were 4 that really stood out. And we worked really closely with Professor Marcus Bowles, who's chair of the Work for the Futures Institute. He's one of the authors of the AQF. He's also an adjunct professor at Deakin University and heads up their rural and regional work futures body, and he consults globally to corporations and educational institutions on the nature of their new models. And I just paraphrase Marcus there, but it's worth having a read. The most essential factor for an individual and their future potential is the ability to change how they think, to adapt and expand. And that's what the new market and the new economies are asking us to do, aren't they? Is change occurring. We change who we work with and how we're working with them. Teamwork and communication are essential ingredients for collaborating and engaging. And all of the stuff we've talked about, everything we've had today around the innovation projects has been around collaborating, engaging, communicating and teamwork, yeah? So if we've got innovation projects running and we've also talked about having the right people on board for those projects, surely it stands to reason that one of the key things you can do is, if I'm going to choose this dude to be on my project, I want confirmation that they can actually do these things with a trusted measure. So I'll really quickly go through this around how these capabilities align to the workplace of the future. We know that changing the skills that employees need and shortening the shelf life of employees' existing skill sets in the process is the change we see now. The current options for job profiling, this is something very interesting. So I've talked to you about our micro-credentials, right? Professional practice credentials, how they provide a valid measure. But if we look at all the ways that we search people to recruit them, what do we recruit them on? Degrees, and technical knowledge. Yet we know that the technical knowledge gets taught better within my organisation than it does out there because we're at the bleeding edge because we're going to make money of it. So why do we do that? So what we're positioning here is a way that we can do, and it's really embryonic, like you know how software and systems goes through beta and then the next stage and whatever, we're sort of pre-beta. I don't even know what that means, right? But it's been drawn up in a really pretty diagram by our CFO and our developing team. But the idea here is that we change the job taxonomies and we don't search by all of those static things like the explicit excellent communication skills. Great, you've got excellent communication skills. What we search by is we align capabilities to the job requirement. So all of those soft skills and all of those professional expertise skills, we align to that and we say you search by that. And what that means is that our diversity of teams that we were talking about before is easier to guarantee because the unconscious bias of me saying, I come from an e-learning technologies background, I've got to hire another person in e-learning technology if I want to build this piece of content, goes, I need somebody who's super good and creative and I don't care where they've come from. Oh, how do I prove that? Hello, they've got the creative credential. I need to search those people. The job profiler gives you data insights into the capabilities required for jobs of the future. And it's also able, because of the amount of data we've got in there, to show you some trends. So this is the other thing. How do we predict? And if we can give some insight into that, then we're helping everybody. So that was me, folks. Sorry I went off tap there a little bit, but thank you.